Donald Trump built his entire career on selling dreams, visions of real estate empires, massive casino wealth, reality TV stardom, and for 5 years, a university that vowed to teach his secrets to everyday Americans for as much as $35,000. Over 6,000 people enrolled, a group including retirees, veterans, single mothers, and immigrants, individuals who truly believed the man they watched weekly on The Apprentice wanted to help them build a better future. But Trump had never faced anyone who had dissected the operation's inner workings, the confidential sales manual that directed employees to target vulnerable people, pressure elderly individuals to drain their life savings, and turn a single mother's financial distress into a $35,000 payment. That all changed when a former public defender from Texas appeared on ABC News, holding a heavily annotated copy of that very guide, and began reading it aloud line by line on national television. By the end of that broadcast, Trump would make an admission his high-priced legal team had spent $25 million trying to keep hidden, a single seven-word phrase that would haunt him in every future legal battle, every news cycle, and every conversation for the rest of his life. They knew what they were signing up for. How exactly did she corner him into making that statement? You'll want to hear how it happened. The ABC News studio was configured for a different kind of conversation, with no podiums, just two leather armchairs positioned directly opposite each other, a moderator's desk to the side, and an audience of 200 people selected to represent what ABC called consumer trust in America. The group was composed of consumer advocates, law professors, former for-profit college students, small business owners, and scattered among them, people who had paid significant amounts to institutions promising life-changing results they never delivered. David Muir stood at the center, backed by a large banner that read, "Consumer Trust and Corporate Accountability, a National Conversation." Donald Trump had agreed to take part, his advisors feeling confident that the topics of consumer trust and corporate accountability were vague enough for deflection and broad enough to allow him to pivot. He was completely unaware that four individuals in the audience had collectively paid $99,000 to Trump University. He also didn't know the woman seated across from him had spent 3 months interviewing former Trump University employees, nor did he realize her binder contained a 48-page sales manual, one a federal judge had unsealed in 2016 over the strong objections of Trump's own lawyers. What he did know was that his challenger was a former public defender from rural East Texas, now a member of Congress, and in his mind, that simplified everything. This was going to be an effortless encounter. Just 45 minutes before airtime in Trump's green room, the atmosphere was casual. As Trump adjusted his cufflinks, he casually remarked, "Trump University, that's what she wants to talk about, a settled case." His campaign manager glanced up from a tablet briefing, cautioning, "Sir, the playbook documents were unsealed in 2016. They're public record and she might have them." Trump waved his hand dismissively, insisting, "Ancient history. No one remembers the playbook, no one cares. I paid $25 million to make it disappear, and you know what that tells people? It shows I'm a businessman who moves on, not someone who wastes time on losers not cut out for real estate." Eric Trump, standing near the door, nodded in agreement, saying, "Exactly right, Dad. You settled it. It's done." Trump pointed dramatically at his reflection and declared, 98% approval rating. Show me any school in America with reviews like that. Harvard doesn't have 98%. Yale doesn't have 98%. Trump University had the highest reviews of any education program in the entire country. His campaign manager exchanged a knowing glance with the communications director. Although neither stated what they both knew, the 98% figure was completely discredited. They knew students had been pressured into giving positive evaluations to receive their certificates, and that many who gave 5-star ratings had also written detailed complaints in the comment sections about aggressive upselling and worthless content. Trump, however, wasn't interested in hearing that, asserting, 5 minutes, she's a public defender. What does she know about business, about building an empire or creating thousands of jobs? He smoothed his tie, smiling at the mirror, and stated, she's probably never made more than $60,000 a year in her life. This is going to be a total massacre. 4 floors below, in a smaller preparation room, Jasmine Crockett wasn't reviewing talking points. Instead, she was carefully reading the sales manual. On page 14, she murmured to herself, running a highlighter over a passage. You do not sell products, benefits, or solutions. You sell feelings. She set the highlighter down, picked up a red pen, and circled text on page 23. Money is never a reason for not enrolling in Trump University. If they really believe in you and your product, they will find the money. And page 31 instructed staff to be deliberate and conscious when communicating with potential students, reminding them that people have time to think, plan, and develop questions and commands, leading people into a flow they must deal with and respond to. Her chief of staff, Marcus Chen, watched from the doorway, observing, "That reads like a manual for a con." Crockett didn't look up, replying, "That's because it is a manual for a con. Every page, every instruction. It's not an education program. It's a machine designed to extract money from people who can't afford to lose it." When Marcus asked what the worst part was, Crockett flipped to a dog-eared page, her expression turning cold and focused as she pointed to page 41, the section on identifying sales targets. She noted it instructed employees to assess vulnerability, quoting an example. Are they a single parent of 3 children that may need money for food? She let the sentence hang in the air, emphasizing that they weren't looking for students, but rather for marks. Desperate people, scared people, people willing to do anything for a chance at a better life. She closed the playbook, adding, "And then they sold them a dream they knew they couldn't deliver." Marcus frowned, asking, "You think he'll actually admit to knowing about the playbook?" Crockett smiled, but it wasn't a warm smile, and said, "He won't need to. He's going to do something better. He's going to blame the victims." He's proud of this, Marcus. He thinks 6,000 people paid because his brand is that powerful, not understanding they paid because they were manipulated. In his mind, that's the same as being a great businessman, she said, picking up her folder containing the playbook, 4 witness files, and a stack of deposition transcripts. He settled for $25 million and called it moving on. Tonight, we're going to show the country what he was moving on from. When Marcus asked if she thought the playbook would be enough, Crockett paused at the door and said, "The playbook is the confession. It's written in his company's own words. Every page says, we knew what we were doing, we targeted the vulnerable, we sold feelings, not education. We told our employees to never let money be a reason for someone not to enroll, even if that meant pushing a 70-year-old widow to drain her retirement account." She straightened her jacket, concluding, "All I have to do is read it out loud and then ask him if he's proud of it." "He'll say he didn't write it," Marcus countered. But Crockett South turned to him and replied, "He owned 93% of the company, collected $5 million in personal profit, and put his name on every advertisement and his face on every brochure. Fine, he didn't write the playbook, but he signed the checks." The insult came before the first question, before they had even properly begun. Trump settled into his chair with the supreme confidence of a man who had never faced a cross-examination he couldn't buy his way out of. "I want to set the record straight about something," he said, gesturing dramatically at Crockett. "My opponent tonight is a congresswoman, but before that she was a public defender in East Texas." He said the words slowly, as if they explained everything, adding, "Very nice, very modest," while looking to the audience for recognition. "I built buildings. I built hotels, I built casinos, I built a brand worth billions of dollars. I created tens of thousands of jobs. I was on the #1 show on television for 14 years. And I started a university, a beautiful university that taught thousands of people how to succeed in real estate." He turned back to Crockett and said, "She defended criminals who couldn't afford a real lawyer. I mean, that's fine, someone has to do it, but let's not pretend we're in the same league." He leaned forward, asserting, "Trump University had a 98% approval rating. 98%. You know what that means? It means almost every single person who took our courses loved them. Best reviews of any education program in the country, maybe the world." He held up his hands, acknowledging, "And yes, there was a lawsuit. There are always lawsuits when you're successful. I settled it for $25 million, and you know why? Not because I did anything wrong, but because it was cheaper than going to trial. Any smart businessman would do the same. You save time, you save energy, you move on to the next deal. That's called efficiency. He settled back, looking satisfied, and said, "So I'm looking forward to this conversation. I just want everyone to know the context. I'm a builder, a creator. She's a public defender from a small town in Texas. And we're going to talk about consumer trust." He chuckled, adding, "This should be interesting." David Muir turned to Crockett and asked if the Congresswoman would like to respond. Crockett leaned forward slightly, her hands folded on the table, her expression calm, pleasant even. The expression of a woman who had spent years cross-examining people who underestimated her. "Thank you, Mr. President. I appreciate the introduction, and I especially appreciate you bringing up that 98% approval rating. I'd like to come back to that number a little later, as I have some questions about how those reviews were collected," she said with a smile. "But first, since you mentioned your university, I have a document I'd like to discuss. It's a 48-page internal sales playbook used by Trump University employees from 2007 to 2010. It was unsealed by a federal judge in 2016 as part of a class-action fraud lawsuit," she explained, holding it up so the cover page reading "Trump University Sales Playbook Confidential" was clearly visible. "I've read every page, and I think the audience deserves to know what's in it," she said, opening the folder and asking, "May I?" Crockett began, "Let me explain to everyone how Trump University actually worked, not from the commercials, not from the brochures with Mr. Trump's face on them, but from the company's own internal documents, the instructions given to the people whose job it was to sell you the dream." She looked at Trump and detailed, "Step 1, the free preview." Noting that Trump University advertised free 90-minute seminars across the country, promising Donald Trump's secrets to success with no obligation, just come and listen. She held up a page from the playbook stating that the seminars taught nothing because they weren't designed to teach, they were designed to sell. The playbook is explicit about this. The goal of the free preview was to, and I'm quoting, "achieve sustained profitability by converting attendees into paying customers." Trump interjected, "That's just marketing. Every company does free previews, every company." Crockett replied, "I'll come back to every company does that," and moved to step 2, the financial assessment. At the free preview, attendees were asked to fill out a financial goal statement, presented as an exercise in personal development to write down dreams and goals. She looked at the audience, explaining, "It wasn't about your goals. The playbook makes clear the financial goal statement was a targeting tool." Employees were instructed to use attendees' financial information to determine who had liquid assets, savings accounts, retirement funds, or credit card capacity. They were sorting the room to identify who had money to take. A murmur rippled through the audience as she described step 3, the upsell. The free preview ended with a pitch that the real secrets are in the 3-day workshop for only $1,195, and the 3-day workshop ended with a bigger pitch for the Gold Elite package at $34,995. She sat down the page and picked up another, saying, "Now here's where it gets interesting. The playbook includes an entire section called the roller coaster of emotions. It instructs employees to manipulate attendees' feelings, excitement, then fear, then hope, in a specific sequence designed to make them vulnerable to purchasing decisions." She read directly from the page. "The motivation that they experience can die quickly as the realities of their daily lives take over. It is our job to rekindle that motivation and make them once again see the potential of achieving their dream." And she looked up and asked, "Did you hear that? It is our job to rekindle that motivation, not to teach them, not to educate them, but to make them feel something, and then sell them something while they're feeling it." Trump shifted in his chair, claiming, "That's standard sales language, every company—" But Crockett interrupted. "Mr. President, I'd like to read you one more passage," Crockett said, her voice calm but with steel underneath. "This is from page 31 of the 2010 playbook, the section on overcoming objections when students say they can't afford the course." She read, "Money is never a reason for not enrolling in Trump University. If they really believe in you and your product, they will find the money. She lowered the page, emphasizing, find the money. Not if they can afford it, not if it fits their budget. Find the money. And the playbook specifies how. Practically, commentators. To old credit card take uh retire. eh, Pay for your courses? Trump said quickly. I didn't write the playbook. I was the brand, the face of the company. I didn't. Crockett cut in. You owned 93% of the company. You collected $5 million in personal profit from the operation. Your name was on every advertisement, every brochure, every email blast sent to over 1 million people. She tilted her head, stating, You didn't write the playbook, but you cashed the checks it generated, every single one. Trump's face reddened as he argued the playbook was written by employees who. But Crockett stopped him. I'm not done, Mr. President. There's one more section I'd like to share, she said, turning to a page marked with a red tab. This is from the section on identifying ideal sales targets. The playbook instructs employees to assess potential students' vulnerabilities and gives an example. She read slowly and clearly, so every word landed. For example, are they a single parent of 3 children that may need money for food? The studio went completely silent as Crockett sat down the playbook and looked at Trump. Your company's sales manual, the document that trained your employees, told them to look for single parents who need money to feed their children, and then to sell those parents a $35,000 course. She paused, adding that a former Trump University instructor described the program in sworn testimony as an effort that preyed upon the elderly and uneducated to separate them from their money. She let the quote sit in the silence before asking, Is that just marketing, Mr. President? Is that what every company does? Trump opened his mouth to respond, but a woman in the audience was already standing. She was perhaps 72, small and dignified, wearing a blue cardigan that had been carefully pressed. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice was steady. My name is Margaret Lawson. I'm a retired 4th-grade teacher from Clearwater, Florida. David Muir nodded at her as she continued. My husband Richard passed away in 2007 from a heart attack. After 41 years of marriage, he left me $180,000 in life insurance, which was everything and supposed to last me the rest of my life. She looked at Trump, saying, I saw your commercial. Donald Trump, the man from television, was going to teach people like me how to invest in real estate, how to build wealth, how to secure my future. Your commercial said the instructors were handpicked by Donald Trump. I thought if Donald Trump chose the teachers, they must be the best. Her voice cracked slightly as she recounted going to the free seminar, noting the excitement, energy, music, and promises. They said she had potential and was exactly the kind of person who could succeed, making her feel special. She wiped her eyes, stating, I signed up for the Gold Elite package, $34,995, and I paid with my husband's life insurance money. The man at the table congratulated me and said, "You're investing in yourself." And I remember thinking Richard would have been proud. She paused, adding, "The instructors hadn't been handpicked by you. They'd never even met you." One of them, I later found out, had declared bankruptcy twice. Another had no experience in real estate whatsoever. And the secrets they taught were things I could have found in any library book or on Google for free. But the worst part wasn't the money. It was what happened after. She looked down, explaining that she tried to apply what they'd taught her and invested $40,000 more, money she couldn't afford to lose, in a real estate deal that went exactly the way they said it wouldn't go, and she lost everything. I'm 72 years old and I work 20 hours a week at a grocery store because I can't afford not to. My husband's life insurance, the money he worked 40 years to provide for me, is gone. 60% of it went to Trump University and the investments they told me to make. She looked at Trump, accusing, "You said the instructors were handpicked by you, but they weren't. You said I'd learn your secrets to success, but I didn't. You said this was an investment in my future, but it destroyed my future." Was I stupid? Is that what you think? That a 72-year-old retired teacher is stupid for believing a famous billionaire who said he wanted to help? She sat down, her hands still trembling. Before Trump could respond, a man stood. He was perhaps 40, wearing a sport jacket over a checkered shirt. His posture was military straight, but his eyes were tired. "My name is David Reeves, Sergeant, United States Army, retired, 2 tours in Iraq, Fallujah, and Ramadi." His voice was controlled and careful, the voice of someone used to reporting under pressure. "I came home in 2007 with $25,000 in separation pay and a case of PTSD that made it hard to sleep, hard to work, hard to do much of anything. The VA gave me treatment, my wife gave me patience, but I needed a plan, something to focus on, something that would make me feel like I was building again instead of just surviving." He looked at Trump, saying, "I saw your ad to learn Donald Trump's secrets to success and thought, this man built an empire. If he's willing to teach people like me, maybe I can build something too. Maybe I can give my family the life they deserve after everything we went through." I signed up for the apprenticeship program, $19,000, nearly everything I had. He paused, stating, "What I got was 3 days in a hotel conference room with a man who had never served, never built anything, and never met Donald Trump. He read from slides and told us to think big and take action. During the lunch break on the last day, they told us to call our banks and increase our credit limits. And they tried to sell me the gold package for $35,000. The sales rep said, 'Sergeant, you fought for your country, now fight for your financial future.' I told him I didn't have $35,000, and he said, 'Do you have a credit card?' And when I said yes, he said, 'Then you have $35,000. He shook his head, noting he didn't buy the gold package. But the $19,000 was gone, and everything they taught him, every secret, he found for free on the internet that same week. His jaw tightened as he confessed, "I was too ashamed to tell my wife for 2 years, and when I finally did, she cried, not because of the money, but because I'd been carrying it alone, because I thought it was my fault." He looked at Trump, asserting, "I served my country. I came home broken and trying to put the pieces together. And you, a man who got 5 deferments from Vietnam, took my separation pay and gave me nothing, less than nothing. You took my confidence too. And for 10 years, I thought it was my fault. I thought I was the fool." His voice dropped as he said, "I wasn't the fool, Mr. President. You were the con man." A third person stood. She was a woman in her mid-30s with dark hair pulled back and her jaw set. Maria Elena Gutierrez, a single mother of 2 kids from Dallas, Texas. She looked directly at Trump, stating, "I lost my job in 2008 during the recession. I was a medical billing clerk, 30 years old, with 2 kids under 5 and no savings. And I was terrified. I saw your commercial at 2 a.m. while my daughter was sleeping on my chest asking, 'Could you be my next apprentice?' And I thought, this is a sign. This is my way out. I went to the free seminar where they asked me to fill out a form about my goals. I wrote, I want to provide for my children. I want to buy a house for my family. I want to stop being scared." She paused, saying, "Now I know what that form was for. It wasn't about my dreams. It was about my money. It was about figuring out how much they could take. The sales rep told me the 3-day workshop would change my life for $1,195. I didn't have it, and he asked if I had a credit card. I said it was maxed out, and he said, "Why don't you call your credit card company right now and ask them to increase your limit? We'll wait." I did it. I called from the seminar room. They increased my limit, and I charged $1,495 that I couldn't afford. She wiped her eyes, recounting that after the 3 days, they wanted her to buy the gold package for $35,000. I said I was a single mother and I couldn't, and the man said, "Money is never a reason not to invest in yourself. If you believe in your future, you'll find the money." She looked at Crockett, saying, "That exact phrase, word for word from the playbook you just read. They said it to me like it was advice, like they were helping me, but it was a script. I was a target. I didn't buy the gold package, but I lost $1,195 I needed for my kids' daycare, and I spent the next year hating myself for being so stupid." Her voice hardened as she stated, "But I wasn't stupid. I was desperate. And your company's playbook, Mr. President, says to find people like me, single parents who need money for food. That's what it says. I read it tonight for the first time, and I finally understand. It was never about education. I was never a student. I was a mark." A fourth person stood. He was older, perhaps 68, with a weathered face and careful hands. When he spoke, his English carried a Vietnamese accent that decades in America had softened but never erased. "My name is Bob Nguyen. I came to this country from Vietnam in 1982 with nothing. I worked in a restaurant kitchen for 4 years. Then I saved enough to open a laundry business in San Jose, a small shop where I worked 16 hours a day for 20 years. He spoke slowly, choosing each word carefully, recounting that in 2008, his American-born, college-educated son showed him an advertisement for Donald Trump's university. He said, "Dad, this is the man from The Apprentice. He's the most successful businessman in America, and he's going to teach us how to invest." He looked at his hands, explaining, "I trusted my son's judgment, and I trusted Donald Trump's name. In Vietnam, when an elder says, 'I will teach you,' you trust them. That is our culture. That is how we were raised. Respect for those who came before, trust in their wisdom." I paid $35,000, my retirement savings, all of it, every dollar I'd saved working 16 hours a day for 20 years. His voice remained steady, but there was something underneath, a grief so old it had calcified into stone. As he stated that what they taught him was worse than nothing. Things that didn't work. Things any library book could have told him. I tried one of their strategies and lost $20,000 more. My son blamed himself and said, "I'm sorry, Dad, I made you do this." I told him it wasn't his fault, but he didn't believe me. He carried that guilt for years. He looked at Trump, saying, "Mr. Trump, in Vietnam, we have a saying, if you steal a buffalo from a farmer, you have stolen his life. My $35,000 was my buffalo. It was everything I'd worked for since I came to this country. You didn't steal it with a gun. You stole it with your name, with your face on a brochure, with a promise you never intended to keep. I am 68 years old. I still work at the laundry. My son still carries the guilt. And you settled for $25 million and called it moving on." He sat down, leaving the studio in silence. Several people in the audience were crying, and David Muir had removed his glasses and was pressing his fingers against his eyes. Trump looked around the room, his expression shifting from irritation to something approaching alarm, as he said, these are old stories. The case was settled." "Mr. President," Crockett's voice cut through the room like a blade sharpened on patience. "Let me ask you some questions, simple ones, yes or no." Trump turned to her, almost grateful for the interruption. "Was Trump University accredited as a university or college by any recognized accrediting body?" "We were in the process of," Trump began, but she interrupted. "Yes or no, was it accredited?" After a pause, he admitted, "Technically, no." But she continued, "Did the New York State Education Department notify you in 2005 that using the name university violated state education law?" "We changed the name eventually," he replied. And she noted, You changed the name 5 years later after multiple investigations. For 5 years, you marketed an unaccredited program as a university in violation of state law. She picked up a document saying, "Let me ask you about the instructors. Your advertisement stated, and I have the brochure here, that Trump University instructors were handpicked by Donald Trump. Is that accurate?" "I was involved in the," he started, but she said, "Let me read from your 2012 deposition." She held up a transcript to page 38, reading the attorney's question, "Mr. Trump, did you select the instructors for Trump University?" And his answer, under oath, "I was not involved in selecting the instructors." Some set down the transcript stating, "So either you lied in the advertisement when you told 6,000 people that you personally selected the teachers, or you lied under oath in a federal deposition. Which one was it?" "I was involved at a high level," he claimed. But she countered, "You weren't involved at all. Your own deposition says so. And your former business partner, Michael Sexton, confirmed under oath that you had no role in selecting instructors, creating curriculum, or overseeing the educational content." She leaned forward, accusing, "You lent your name to a program you didn't design, didn't teach, and didn't supervise. You told people you'd handpicked their instructors when you hadn't. And your company charged them up to $35,000 for courses taught by people with no qualifications, including at least one instructor who had filed for personal bankruptcy." "Those are complex business," he tried to explain, but she interrupted. "Let me ask you about the 98% approval rating." Trump brightened slightly, saying, "98%? The best?" She asked, "Do you know how those surveys were administered?" "People filled out forms," he said, but she clarified that students were required to fill out positive evaluations in order to receive their completion certificates, told they couldn't graduate without completing the survey, and the surveys were collected by the same instructors who taught the courses, not by an independent party. She pulled up a document noting, "And even with that pressure, Mr. President, even with students being told they had to complete the forms to get their certificates, many of them wrote complaints in the comment sections. I'll read a few." She read, "Requesting we raise our credit limits on our credit cards at lunch seemed a little transparent." That's from a student who gave 5 stars on the numerical scale but felt the upselling was transparent. Another wrote, "Just teach the topics and stop pushing products and invoking fear." Another said, "I felt depressed and discouraged by the aggressive sales tactics." She looked up, emphasizing, "These are from people who gave your program high ratings, people who felt pressured into rating it well. And even then, even under that pressure, they wrote down the truth in the margins." She sat down, declaring, "The surveys, your 98% approval rating is fiction, Mr. President, built on coerced reviews from people who had to give you 5 stars to get their certificates, and you've been repeating it for a decade." Trump's face had gone from red to a deep mottled purple, his hands gripping the arms of his chair as he shouted, "This is a setup! This whole thing, you bring these people, you bring this old playbook, you bring these sob stories." "I didn't bring anyone, Mr. President. ABC invited audience members through a public application process," she said. "These people waited years, some of them over a decade, for someone to ask you these questions in a setting where you couldn't walk away." "The case was settled. I paid $25 million. That means it's over," he insisted. "It means you paid $25 million without admitting wrongdoing. It doesn't mean there was no wrongdoing. It means you paid to make it stop," she clarified. She paused and said, "Let me ask you a direct question. Looking at the people who just spoke, a retired teacher who lost her husband's life insurance, a combat veteran who lost his separation pay, a single mother who was pressured into debt, a Vietnamese immigrant who lost his retirement savings. Do you believe your company treated these people fairly? In business, do you believe your company treated these people fairly? Yes or no?" Trump's voice rose as he said, "Look, 6,000 people signed up. Nobody forced them. They chose to enroll. They saw my name, they saw the opportunity, and they signed up. They knew what they were signing up for," he said, jabbing his finger at the audience. "Hey, if they didn't do well, that's on them, not on me. I gave them the tools, I gave them the brand. What they did with it was their choice. That's how America works. You take a risk, you either succeed or you don't. Not every student at Harvard becomes a millionaire either. Are you going to sue Harvard? He was standing now, his face contorted, yelling, I created opportunity. I gave people access to information they never would have had, and some of them didn't make it. That happens. That's life. But they knew. They all knew what they were signing up for. He stopped, leaving the studio in silence. Crockett let the moment breathe for 5 seconds, then 10, the silence filling every corner of the room like water rising in a locked chamber, before she spoke quietly, almost gently repeating, they knew what they were signing up for. She turned to Margaret Lawson, still sitting in the audience with her blue cardigan pressed and hands folded in her lap, and asked, Mrs. Lawson, when you signed up for Trump University, did you know the instructors had not been handpicked by Donald Trump? No, Margaret whispered. Did you know the program was not accredited as a university? No. Did you know the sales playbook instructed employees to target your vulnerability as a recent widow? No, she said, her voice breaking. I didn't know any of that. Crockett turned to Sergeant Reeves and asked, Sergeant, when you enrolled, did you know that the program had been flagged by the New York State Education Department for illegally using the word university? No, ma'am. Did you know that the company's own sales manual described the goal as sustained profitability rather than education? No. No, she said, her voice breaking. I didn't know any of that. No, Maria said, crying. I thought he was trying to help me. Crockett turned to Bob Nuon and asked, Mr. Nuon, when you paid $35,000 of your retirement savings, did you know what you were signing up for? Bob Nuon looked at Trump for a long moment before speaking, his voice steady and clear. I knew what he told me I was signing up for. He told me it was an education. He told me it was the secret to success. He told me his instructors were the best. None of that was true. He paused, adding, I didn't know what I was signing up for. He made sure of that. Crockett turned back to Trump, saying, They didn't know, Mr. President. They didn't know because you made sure they didn't know. That was the entire design of the operation. Sell feelings, not facts. Use the name, the brand, the television fame to create trust, and then exploit that trust for profit. She held up the playbook, declaring, This document is the proof, your company's own words, your own employees, describing the program as an effort that preyed upon the elderly and uneducated. Your own sales manual, instructing staff to target single mothers who need money for food. And when confronted with the people whose lives your company damaged, your response on national television was, they knew what they were signing up for, it's on them. She set the playbook down, saying, Mr. President, you just told the country that 6,000 people, retirees, veterans, single mothers, and immigrants, deserved what happened to them, that they should have known better, that their suffering is their own fault. That's not a defense, that's a confession. Trump's hands were shaking as he grabbed the arms of his chair and stood, yelling, This is ridiculous. This is a witch hunt. The case was settled for $25 million. Sir, I don't have to sit here and listen to this. I'm being ambushed. These people were planted. The questions were rigged. He pointed at Crockett, shouting, And you're nothing. You're a public defender from East Texas. You've never built anything. You've never created a single job. You don't know the first thing about business or education or... Mr. President, I created Trump University. I gave people an opportunity. It's not my fault they couldn't execute. He ripped the microphone from his lapel, declaring, I'm done. I don't answer to a... Before stopping himself, his eyes darting around the studio at the audience, the cameras, and the 4 witnesses in the front rows. Finish your sentence, Mr. President. Crockett's voice was soft. Trump's mouth worked, but no sound came out, so he turned and stormed toward the exit as his handlers rushed from the wings and Eric Trump tried to intercept him, while someone from the campaign was already on a phone. This is a disgrace, Trump shouted over his shoulder. Total setup. I won that case. I paid $25 million and I won. The stage door slammed behind him, his footsteps echoing in the silence. As Crockett stood alone on the stage, the 4 witnesses were still in the audience. Margaret Lawson, David Reeves, Maria Elena Gutierrez, Bob Nuon, all watching, all waiting. Crockett turned to face the camera and said, he called them losers who couldn't succeed. He said they knew what they were signing up for. He said it was their fault. She straightened her jacket, continuing, let me tell you what they actually signed up for. They signed up because a man they saw on television every week, a man whose name was on buildings and books and billboards, told them he wanted to help. He told them he'd handpicked the best instructors. He told them they'd learn his personal secrets to success. He told them it was a university. None of that was true. It wasn't a university. He didn't pick the instructors. The instructors weren't qualified. The secrets were available for free at any library, and the entire operation was designed, from the playbook to the sales scripts to the seating charts, to extract as much money as possible from people who couldn't afford to lose it. She looked at the empty chair where Trump had sat, noting he built a machine to sell dreams to desperate people, and when the machine was exposed, he paid $25 million to make it go away. He never apologized. He never admitted fault. He never looked a single victim in the eye and said, I'm sorry. Tonight, we gave him that chance, and his response was, they knew what they were signing up for. She turned to the witnesses, saying, Mrs. Lawson, your husband worked 40 years so you'd be taken care of. Sergeant Reeves, you fought for your country and came home looking for a new beginning. Ms. Gutierrez, you wanted to build a life for your children. Mr. Nuon, you spent 20 years building something from nothing in a country you chose to call home. None of you did anything wrong. You trusted someone who presented himself as trustworthy. You believed someone who spent millions of dollars making himself believable. The fault is not yours. It was never yours. She picked up the playbook and held it toward the camera, declaring, this is not a sales manual. It's a predator's handbook, and the man who profited from it just told the country that his victims deserved it. She paused, explaining, a con artist doesn't need a weapon. They don't need threats or force. They just need your trust. And the shame you feel afterward, the voice that says, I should have known better. I should have been smarter. That shame is the con artist's greatest protection, because as long as the victim blames themselves, the con man walks free. She looked at the camera, stating, tonight that changes. The shame doesn't belong to you. It belongs to him. She turned and walked off stage, and behind her, the audience began to applaud. First one person, then 10, then all of them, standing, clapping, some crying, some nodding, some holding each other. Margaret Lawson was holding Bob Nuon's hand. Neither had said a word. Neither needed to. The broadcast ended at 9:47 p.m. Eastern, 73 minutes ahead of schedule. By 10 o'clock p.m., the clip was everywhere. Trump's voice, red-faced and jabbing his fingers, saying, they knew what they were signing up for. If they didn't do well, that's on them. Next dice. Did the hashtag, they knew what they signed up for, trended #1 within 15 minutes, and by midnight, it had been viewed over 60 million times. By morning, 180 million. Not My Fault trended at #2, and #just Public Defender trended at #3, a carryover from their first encounter, resurrected with new force. At 10:32 p.m., Trump posted on Truth Social, total ambush, planted audience, rigged questions, ABC is dead to me. I won that case, paid $25 million, and they're still bringing it up. At 11:14 p.m., he posted, the students in the audience were actors paid by Democrats. Someone should investigate their finances. At 11:47 p.m., he wrote, when I said they knew what they signed up for, I meant they were adults making adult decisions, personal responsibility. That's what made America great. At 12:29 a.m., he claimed, Trump University had a 98% approval rating, the best reviews, ask anyone. The lawsuit was a shakedown by political hacks. At 10:03 a.m., he posted, Crockett is a nobody from East Texas, never built anything, never created a single job. She defended criminals, now she's attacking the greatest businessman in American history. At 1:41 a.m., he asserted, the playbook was written by low-level employees. I never saw it, never approved it. Fake news is trying to blame me for something employees did. At 2:15 a.m., he wrote, Going to sleep, but let me be clear. I built Trump University to help people. Some couldn't cut it. That's not my fault. That's life. Winners win and losers blame others. Or the parenthetical at the end, winners win and losers blame others, became its own hashtag within an hour. Winners, losers. He had posted 29 times by 6 a.m., each post proving Crockett's point more thoroughly than she ever could. At 6:30 a.m., his campaign manager finally reached him saying, "Sir, every time you say they knew what they signed up for, you're validating her argument. The lawyers are begging you to stop." Trump's response, posted at 6:38 a.m., was, "My lawyers are the best. They got me a great settlement. $25 million is nothing to me. That's like you dropping a quarter." At 7:02 a.m., he added, "Just watch the clip again. I was right. They did know. Nobody put a gun to their head. Personal responsibility. Yes." The morning shows were unanimous. He blamed the victims. One CNN anchor said on national television that he told a 72-year-old widow, a combat veteran, a single mother, and an immigrant that it was their fault they were defrauded, noting, "That's not a political gaffe, that's a revelation of character." A legal analyst on MSNBC observed that what Crockett did was forensic. She didn't argue or attack. She read his own playbook back to him, let his own documents make the case, then asked him if it was fair, and his answer was, they should have known better. Another commentator called the playbook devastating, saying, "You can disagree about politics or policy, but when you read the section about targeting single mothers who need money for food and then hear Trump say they knew what they signed up for, there's no spin that fixes that." On Fox News, the coverage was careful, the playbook was not discussed, the witnesses were not shown, and the few commentators who addressed it stuck to a single talking point. The case was settled. It's old news. But one Fox anchor broke ranks, saying quietly that she read the playbook that morning, the section about targeting vulnerable people, and admitted she didn't have a spin for that and didn't think there was one. An awkward silence followed before they moved to a commercial break. Within 72 hours, 3 separate consumer protection organizations filed formal requests for the Federal Trade Commission to reopen its review of Trump University. Within a week, the phrase "they knew what they were signing up for" had been cited in 2 ongoing fraud cases, both involving for-profit education companies that use similar sales tactics, with attorneys arguing that Trump's statement demonstrated the mindset of operators who view consumer exploitation as an acceptable business practice. Within a month, 7 state attorneys general had announced coordinated investigations into predatory for-profit education programs across the country, citing the Trump University playbook as a template, evidence that the tactics described were not aberrations but industry practices. Former Trump University employees came forward, dozens of them. Sales representatives who'd been trained to use the playbook and felt sick doing it. Instructors hired with no qualifications and told to read from scripts. Support staff who'd watched elderly people sign away their savings and couldn't do anything about it. One former sales representative told The Washington Post they quit after 3 months because at 24 years old they were convincing retirees to put their life savings on credit cards, going home every night feeling like a criminal. They added that when they saw Crockett read the playbook on TV, they cried because someone finally said out loud what they'd been carrying for 10 years. A website appeared, They Knew What They Signed Up For, org, which collected stories from former students of predatory for-profit schools, not just Trump University, but dozens of similar operations across the country. Within 2 months, it had documented over 12,000 individual accounts from teachers, nurses, veterans, single parents, and immigrants, all with the same story: a big name, a big promise, a big price tag, and nothing at the end. 3 months after the broadcast, Jasmine Crockett introduced the Consumer Education Protection Act in the House of Representatives. The bill proposed 3 things: mandatory accreditation disclosure for any program using the word university, college, or institute in its marketing; enhanced penalties for companies that use high-pressure sales tactics targeting the elderly and financially vulnerable; and a federal fund to provide restitution to victims of fraudulent education programs. At the press conference announcing the bill, she was asked about Trump's response that they knew what they were signing up for. Crockett replied, "So, the bill is simple. We're going to make sure people actually do know. Full disclosure, real accreditation. No more selling dreams to people who deserve the truth." The bill passed the House 4 months later but stalled in the Senate. Yet the conversation had changed across the country. Something was happening, something quiet but unmistakable. People who'd been scammed by for-profit schools, by fake investment seminars, by predatory lenders started talking. Not just about Trump University, but about the larger pattern, the playbook of the con, find vulnerable people, sell feelings, blame the victim. A support group formed online called Not My Fault, and within 6 weeks it had 30,000 members. People who'd never met discovered they shared the same story, the same shame, the same terrible conviction that they'd been stupid, that they deserved it, that it was their fault. A former Trump University student from Ohio wrote, "I thought I was the only one. For 8 years, I thought I was the only person dumb enough to fall for it. And then I watched that broadcast and I heard 3 other people tell my exact story. And for the first time in 8 years, I didn't feel stupid. I felt angry at the right person." 6 months after the broadcast, Jasmine Crockett gave the keynote address at the National Consumer Protection Conference in Washington, D.C., to an auditorium full of consumer advocates, attorneys general, fraud investigators, and in the front rows, several dozen former victims of predatory education programs. Crockett waited for the applause to fade, and when she spoke, her voice was quiet but carried through the room. "He said they knew what they were signing up for." She paused, adding, "He said it like it was obvious, like it was their fault, like a 72-year-old widow should have read the fine print, like a combat veteran with PTSD should have seen through the sales pitch, like a single mother calling her credit card company during a seminar at a man's instruction should have known she was being played. He said it because he believes it. He genuinely, truly believes that if someone trusts you and you take their money, that's their problem, not yours." She looked at the audience, stating, "That is the philosophy of every con artist who has ever lived. It's not new, it's not clever. It's the oldest trick in the book. Make someone trust you, take what they have, and then blame them for trusting. But here's what con artists never understand. Trust is not weakness. Trust is the foundation of every good thing in a society, every business, every family, every community, every democracy. When you exploit trust, you don't just hurt the individual. You poison the well for everyone." She paused, continuing, "The people who enrolled in Trump University weren't stupid. They were hopeful. They saw a famous man on television who said, 'I want to help people like you,' and they believed him, because that's what decent people do. They take other people at their word. The shame doesn't belong to them. It never did. The shame belongs to the man who built a machine to exploit their hope and then called it smart business. The shame belongs to the man who paid $25 million to make it go away and never apologized. The shame belongs to the man who, when finally confronted by his victims on live television, said they knew what they were signing up for." She raised her voice slightly, asserting, "They didn't know. He made sure they didn't know." That was the design, that was the playbook, and tonight, the whole country has read it. She looked at the former students in the front rows, saying, "To everyone who was ever told it was their fault, by a con man, by a predatory company, by the voice in your own head that said you should have known better, listen to me. It was not your fault. You were not stupid. You were brave enough to hope for something better, and someone took advantage of that bravery. The shame is his, not yours, not yours." The applause lasted 3 minutes. Some people were standing, some were crying, some were doing both. 1 year after the broadcast, Bob Newon received a letter. It was from his son Kevin, not mailed, but hand-delivered, placed on the kitchen table of the laundry where Bob still worked. It read, "Dad, for 12 years I blame myself. I was the one who showed you the ad. I was the one who said, 'Dad, it's Donald Trump. He's the most successful businessman in America.' I was the one who convinced you to go. When you lost the money, I thought I had destroyed your life. I thought I had taken your retirement, and I couldn't look at you for months without wanting to apologize. But after the broadcast, after I heard you speak, After I heard Crockett say the shame belongs to him, not you, I finally understood. It wasn't my fault either. We trusted someone who spent millions making himself believable. We believed a promise that was designed to be believed. That's not stupidity, that's decency. I'm sorry it took me 12 years to write this. I'm sorry you spent 20 years in that laundry when you should have been retired. I'm sorry I carried the guilt silently instead of sharing it. But I'm not sorry we went to that broadcast because for the first time someone told the truth. And for the first time I'm not ashamed. I love you, Dad. Kevin. Bob read the letter 3 times. Then he folded it carefully, placed it in his shirt pocket, and went back to work. That evening he called Kevin and said, "Contrai, don't carry it anymore. We're done carrying it. T." On the wall of the laundry, next to the faded business license and the photo of a young Vietnamese man arriving in San Francisco with one suitcase, Bob taped a newspaper clipping. The split-screen image from ABC, Trump, red-faced and shouting, they knew what they were signing up for, next to Crockett, calm and still, holding a 48-page playbook like a lantern in the dark. Underneath the clipping, in careful handwriting, Bob had written 2 words, "not guilty." He called them losers who couldn't succeed. He said they knew what they were signing up for. He said it was their fault. His own playbook told employees to target single parents who need money for food. His own manual said, "You don't sell products, you sell feelings." Les narcisses. His own company was described by its own employees as an operation that preyed upon the elderly and uneducated. And when confronted by the people his company damaged, he said, they knew what they were signing up for. The clip has been viewed 200 million times. The Consumer Education Protection Act is moving through Congress. And across America, people who spent years blaming themselves for being defrauded are finally hearing the truth. It was not their fault. If you've ever been scammed by someone you trusted, share this story. If you know someone who still blames themselves for believing a lie, send it to them. If you've ever been told that your hope was your weakness, remember the shame belongs to the con man, never to the mark. Trust is not stupidity. Hope is not weakness. And the next time someone tells you they knew what they were signing up for, remember what Crockett said. A con artist doesn't need a weapon. They just need your trust. Not my fault.